Good morning, friends. Carole from the Building Committee. And for those of you that think, well, when did she end up on the Building Committee? I would like to point out that I was on the Building Committee at the point at which we were still considering 5 different options of what we would do. And I was a proponent of moving to Friends Community School property so that we could co-locate with them. So that's how long ago I was on the Building Committee. And I was there for some years, then I was off, and kind of sitting in on when I was clerk, and assistant clerk. And so then when Glenn died, I became a substitute for Glenn, but a poor substitute. But it's nice to be here this morning, and I want to say, starting out, that I'm very excited about the point at which we've arrived. I'm wearing my t-shirt, Way Will Open, in case you haven't noticed that, because I think, in fact, we are experiencing that process after many years of frustration. And what I think we're getting, and I'll just make a quick summary now, is a more modest building with a great deal of accessibility. And I think that those two things are really exciting for us to have. You have a little sheet of the history there. I don't want to put people to sleep, but we started this process in 2007. In 2013, we approved design criteria, not all of which we have been able to meet, but accessible spaces for worship and social gatherings with a way to easily move from one to another, accessible restrooms, a larger social space and more functional kitchen. This is one that we've probably only met partially, a worship space with an somebody say a word. Adjacent, thank you, space that can be used for special events, but not necessarily every Sunday. And classrooms of varying sizes with access to the playground for the younger children. And a place apart, but not too far apart, for young friends. Well, in the end, what we've added are 2 additional classrooms on the lower level with access by an elevator. So all those 2 classrooms plus the 2 classrooms across the way means we will have 4 accessible classrooms. And if young friends wanted to take over the 2nd floor, that might be available. We'll have to see some young friends first because we really haven't seen much of them. And then finally, better site circulation and use of outdoor space. Well, we have preserved our outdoor space in the back, which was something that people were really anxious to do. And we've improved that space by putting in the play equipment, which seems to be extremely popular. So, so that's kind of where we are in a nutshell on those design criteria. In 2020, we received bids for the 2-story addition. That is this is where we started. Beautiful building. Some people were a little worried about it being too much for us. And in fact, it was too much for us. By the time we got the bids, we were into the pandemic. Construction prices went up quite significantly, and bids came in well over $3 million, which was not affordable to us. At that point, we decided to go ahead with the renovation of the meeting house and the floor below, which gave us new walls in here, new windows, air conditioning, praise the Lord, and other things that probably we can't see. Okay, so that was, mold remediation. We can't see it, but we have had a great deal of work done on both levels to eliminate water, and eliminate mold. So that is very good news. In October of this past year, 2023, well, in between, there was this weird set of events that led us to the one-story building. And if anybody wants to hear that story, see me afterwards, and I'll tell it. But it is a very interesting, weird story. It did feel like way open. And we got the idea of moving to a one-floor, a one-story building. And Dave, if you can put up the one-story building, nice drawing that John did with now colored in. This is what we approved in October of 2023. And there it is online. So same building, floor locked off. The exciting part about that is now, when you walk out of this room, you will make a left and you will walk right into the social space with the kitchen right there also. So there will be no more going up and down steps to get to the kitchen and social space. There will be an elevator, but it won't be needed for that. And that's exciting.
Carole?
Yes.
I hate to interrupt your flow, but
Yeah.
you keep saying elevator, and all the diagrams say lift.
It's a lift.
And there's a big difference.
There is a big difference. It's a lift. A lift is much less expensive than an elevator. And actually, to my mind, we won't have to use it that much. Because most people who go downstairs will be able to use the stairs. But nobody, if we have handicapped children, we can use the classrooms right over there so that there's no reason to have to go up and down much of the time. Does that make sense to you? I like the idea of having a lift, but only there in case we need it. Because most things will be on this floor. Most of the stuff that goes on. Okay, so any questions just so far? I'm gonna go into details in a minute, but any questions just about the looks of this? You come up from the parking lot, I should mention this. There are a few steps which you can avoid, but that go up to the double doors of the new building. To avoid the steps, you would go left, up, you can't see it here, and then across on a small deck, and then across the deck to this building. So wheelchair accessible. It will change our plantings, unfortunately, but because John will it take out those beautiful plantings, John?
Some, but not most.
Oh, yay, some will stay. I've been worrying about that. So, everybody can see this, yes, put,
As we go out from here, as we push our way out this way, how close are we coming to Metz Rock Road? Or the sign, or how far are we going?
do you know how far it is, John? I mean, we won't be going out that way because the door goes to the side.
I know, I mean, the building,
The front of the building will be 20 feet behind where our sign is now.
20 feet behind the sign.
okay.
We won't be dropped onto Metzeroth Road.
If I could add, part of our time was at a premium, so we did talk about for August, committee for business, staking out the outline. So it should be clear to people.
Oh, yes, thank you. That's good.
Thank you.
Okay, this has been approved. Any questions beyond that? So now we're going to the recent activities of the building committee. And these have been exciting. Oh, wait a minute, we need to go to the interior. Sorry, got so excited. All right. Dave, there's a picture with the drawings of the rooms. So here, this is this level. Come up on a ramp. If you were to be in a wheelchair, you would go this way and then across to the porch.
What's the construction material? Is it frame or
Yeah.
brick or what?
Frame
Frame? And there's a crawl space?
underneath, yes.
The crawl space closed off all the way around?
What do you mean by closed off? There are hatches which will access the crawl space. And there will be window wells.
What happens to the building over there? Just stays
Just
exactly the same?
Yeah. It's
No
going
more
to be
breezeway anymore or anything like that?
breezeway?
Last time I was involved in this discussion was 100 years ago. We were talking about connecting the buildings.
There's the deck, that's up there.
There's the deck
An
connecting.
open deck.
But
It's a
that's it.
Okay.
That building, the inside, I understand, is gonna be updated. We've approved some money to
Yes.
make improvements to the two lower level.
And what will the purpose of it be? What's going to be the purpose of the building?
The two classrooms on the main floor, and there's one additional room on the second floor.
And then there's 2 other classrooms in this building, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I'll talk about now.
Carole, we need to kind of get going
Okay,
time-wise.
all right, so you should have this on, I think, the very back sheet of your handout, which that has the drawing on the front. And you can look at it there. You can just say this is where you would come in off the porch into the lobby, go directly into the meeting room here, or into the social hall and kitchen here. Accessible, gender-neutral accessible bathrooms here. One wheelchair accessible. And then for the lower level, our current social space becomes 2 classrooms with most likely a movable partition. I hear they've really improved on the lower level. Any questions about that? Yes?
Is that drawing you have up there the final architect's drawing?
You
As
know,
close as I could get it from.
yeah.
Okay, because it's different from this drawing.
Yes, it is different
So
from that.
it would, to me, it'd be
This one's
a
a
good
bit
idea,
closer.
since this is the drawing people are gonna take home with them, to point out the differences and why. And I'll just start with my question, which is the partition or the wall between the, not on the first floor, the wall between the social space and the
Oh.
lobby.
Has
And that
more
drawing
doors.
has one door. And in this drawing has multiple doors,
Right.
as if this were meeting our earlier criteria of an opening for additional space, and that does not, and why was that decision made?
Has to do with coats. We have no place to put coats in this new configuration. The lobby is not as big as the one that was on the 2-story. If we can find another place to put coats, we could consider that. The doors are also fire doors, and they are incredibly expensive. But this would be 2 doors that open up completely.
There's also cost.
That's what I just said.
Doors are extremely expensive,
Yes, because of their fire doors
and they're fire doors.
yes.
At the risk of being picky, I would point out that they're fire exit doors.
Okay,
They're
fire
not
exit.
fire doors per se, and you don't wanna plant that idea in the minds of public officials.
Okay. We also have another exit out of that room down these stairs outside. Okay. On to, this is, these are wonderful drawings of the various sides of the building. I don't think you have this in your handout.
No,
So if you want to see this, stop by and look at it on your way out. We'll have all of these in the lobby for you to see. But it's red, white, and blue, so it was colored in by John. So you can see the roof, the old building, and the new building. spend some time with that when you get a chance, if you want to. Okay, that's that part. Now I want to talk about the recent activities of the building committee. So given that we had architectural drawings, we then put them out. We looked for 2 companies that were minority contractors and 2 other contractors that were recommended. And we asked for bids from these 4 companies. They were also interested in bidding, but one of them did pull out. He said that they were too busy, and that was one of the minority contractors. So we requested bids then from 3. I will tell you, I'm not going to go into a lot of information about the bids. They were very complex. Thank heavens for Larry Clements and our architect who could go through all of the different areas. Some people put information in one category and others put the same information in another category. So, you know, there was apples and oranges. The bids came in. They were higher than we hoped, which is always the case. And so then we had interviews with each of the companies, talked about their bids, talked about various aspects of it. And as a result of that, 2 out of 3 of the companies were able to reduce their numbers. And the lowest number is in the range of $2.2 million. Now, that does not include all costs, but that's building costs, as I understand it. And that was much happier news to us than what we'd had previously. And all of these companies agreed that if they worked with us, they would value engineer as they go along, meaning that they would be looking for ways that we could in fact reduce costs as we went. So we did that. And in the end, there was one contractor who stood out in almost every way that we are ready to give the okay to. In fact, I guess we have. And that is Mona Builders, Mona Construction. Some of you may have met Nick Mona, who came with his wife to actually see us during the bidding process, which was, I thought, really nice. They really like to do churches and church renovations. It's a particular niche for them. He was born in Prince George's County. Just mentioned that, which tickles me. We were interested in percentage of minority subcontractors or minority-owned subcontractors. Mona reported 50%, the other 2 reported in the range of 20 to 30%. Let's see. Very good communication on that part of Mona. And by report, a very good history of coming in on budget and on time. So those are all things that bode well for this particular project. And you know, I want to go back to this process of way opening. It's just like at some point we've been being carried in a certain direction, that all the factors pointed in a certain direction, and it's been wonderful to experience that rather than before. I just felt like it was way closing, sort of like the metro doors, you know, way closing, but in this case it's way open. Let's see. Okay, that's what I have to say. Any questions at this point. Yes, Margaret?
Has there been any discussion of structuring the first floor, the new structure, in a way that if 30 years from now, we wanted to put a second floor on, it would have the support to sustain that?
We have not talked about that. I suspect it would cost money.
It might.
Most
Tons, really?
foundations are.
Yeah, because all of the mechanical and electrical equipment is here, so it would all have to be ripped out and.
Oh, yeah. No, but I'm just saying that if the foundation, if they were like, oh, you need to have footings that are this big for a one-story building, if you wanted them to be a two-story building, while you're pouring them, make them twice as big, and it might be a very relatively small amount of money that would then lay the path. It's just a thought if that was something that had been considered.
But I know if we were just happy to find this
Sure,
particular
absolutely.
variation.
It might be worth just asking the question of the contractors. If it was just a very small thing that would give you more options in the future.
I think that almost any footing you put for one floor will accommodate a second floor.
They certainly do it. They put on houses. I don't know if this is different. Yes.
Not to cross, but this building right here was built on a very old standard. And we can anticipate that that standard has been changed. For one thing, a department of the US government is pushing really hard on that to get local jurisdictions to upgrade your building codes. And that may be a complication that overwhelms anything we want to do with the new area, even if we were to have footings in the new area that would allow for a second story. We might find that we're in a position where they have to do a rather complicated addition to the footings for this building, so don't get your heart set on it.
Well, just to also clarify, our current lobby will be demolished, taken off, and a new lobby will be put out there. So whether or not that helps, I don't know, but it might be that were we to put on a second floor, it would stand only on the new footings and not the old ones. Okay, in turning this over now to finance, I want to say one thing that I've been doing, and that is I realized that I personally have been holding back on contributing more money to the building because of way closing, it was just watching this process and thinking, maybe this is not meant to be. And more recently, I've been thinking, gosh, maybe other people are doing that too. So I've gone to several people and asked them, and they, by and large, said, yes, I have been holding back. So I want you to know I'm about to give money. So if you've been holding back, I'd like you to think about it too. I think there's a very good chance that this is where we're meant to go. Okay, and on that note, I'll turn it over to James.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Carole. Can you hear me online okay? I'm James Wilkinson. I am the clerk of your committee. This one.
Yeah.
Thank you. David, if you could pull up the spreadsheet. That looks like this. Some are in color, some are in black and white. Sorry, I'm running out of time there, but I did put the colors in parentheses on here. And while you're looking for your spreadsheet and bring it up, oh, good, that was fast. Thank you, David. I really want to thank Building Committee for their partnership in this. Just delightful partners to work with. It's been a great ongoing dialogue between finance and building committees back and forth through different clerks and through different clerks of meeting and rump groups and all these different manifestations that it's had. It's been a very thoughtful process, a very rewarding process because, well, as you can see, we're on the brink of something great. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the spreadsheet, but I do want to just show you what it is. It's a variation of the old thermometer, right? Here's our goal and here's how much we've raised, but with very specific kind of breakouts to show you where the risks are. Now, when I say the word risk, I'm talking about very specific kinds of risk, which I've outlined in the other document, which is your Word document, particularly on the very last page of your little mini package here. So I don't want to confuse things and refer people off to the documents and getting ahead of myself. But we raised 1.45 million through the first two capital campaigns, 1.5 million, right? So that was an amazing indicator of the capacity and the commitment of the meeting. 500,000 of which, approximately, I'm just talking around numbers, right? Approximately 500,000 went to the work done on this building that was described by Carole. So a lot of that was coming from the outside and waterproofing to make sure we had no more water damage. And I think that was really the big ticket item there. But there was a lot, and you can just look around and see this. The building's been transformed. In a way, COVID was a blessing because no one was coming to meeting, and we were able to get that done relatively quickly. Okay, so that leaves us with roughly $1 million cash in hand. There is the next kind of tranche. There is the low risk or light green. That's what we're calling friendly loans, also defined in the packet in detail. We've talked about it enough that I didn't want to spend a ton of time on that today. And really where that bold box is, 2.2 to 2.3 million. Okay, that's what we're focusing on. We're calling that the sweet spot. That's off on the right, way on the right-hand side. That's the sweet spot. That's where we want the construction costs to, the project construction costs to end up. Because if the project cost is there, you build in contingency and you build in permits and fees and things like that, that puts us in the between 2.4, 2.5 million mark overall. Okay, so still a little bit of medium risk there. Anything beyond that, anything beyond 2.5 million would put us into the higher risk area. Okay, with extreme stress on the annual budget. So let me pause there. And now I'm going to, and you can pull up on screen, David, please, the Word document. I'm on page 1 of that. So after a decade of discussion, discernment, planning, and preparation, we are on the verge of approving the long-awaited meetinghouse renovation and expansion project. I noted that the building committee working with the building committee, we got this, the scaled down project plan approved by meeting for business last October. It's bright, it's cheery, it's a functional kitchen, larger lobby, gender neutral and accessible bathrooms, a lift for accessibility between levels, 2 new classrooms, and connected decking between the White House and Meeting House. So there's a lot of other things, but those are the features that, when I look at that list of what was discerned back in 2013, we got nearly everything we're looking for in this 1-story building. Okay, so then the spreadsheet I just referred to was presented at last meeting for business. So in short, based on the research done of the financial capacity of meeting and the enthusiasm for the project, the sweet spot I just mentioned between 2.2 and 2.3 million, and there was only one of the contractors, the one that was selected, Mona, who was in Mona Enterprises, Mona, what do you call Mona?
The other one, Spring?
Builders.
Mona Builders?
Construction.
Mona Construction.
I looked at-
Thank you. Mona Construction was the only one that landed in that 2.2 to 2.3 million gap. Okay, and then I mentioned including contingency fees. So when I say we did research, you will remember that we brought in an outside consultant from Pendle Hill, Shannon Isaacs, and she helped us design the way we were going to do it through conversations and focus groups and one-on-one phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. So a ton of work was done about meeting, commitment to meeting, stewardship of the community, bigger questions about how much is in your wallet, how much is in your bank account. The questions really weren't about that. It was what is your capacity, what's your commitment to meeting, what's our communal commitment to meeting, and enthusiasm for the project. And then you come to what would that look like. And it's important to note that because when we created that subcommittee, it's the stewardship and development, not just development, not just fundraising. That was a really key point that was made at the time that we created that subcommittee. It's stewardship first and then development. Okay, so that said, this is the 4-part plan to pay for the building project. And I feel like we really needed this in writing, so I spent a good deal of time yesterday making sure I wrote this in clear, concise, and simplified language. But obviously I'm here for questions, but I just want to be as clear as possible so you can take it home and sit with it so that if there are questions, we've got at least several weeks to come with questions. It's a 4-part plan. This took years to get us to this point, but let's go over it. I mentioned donations and friendly loans, so that's kind of the first wave, and we've done 2 capital campaigns. Right now we have just over $1 million cash in hand that's generating interest even as we speak, which is nice. We do have a few friendly loans in hand. That means the money's already in there and that's in the bank account and that's generating interest as well. And several others have been pledged. So when you get to the definition of friendly loans and the little definition pages in the back, really we're looking for loans in that 50,000-ish and up. And we got a sizable one, a pledge, I should say. It's not in hand yet, but that's from Homewood. meeting, which is extremely generous, and that will go a long way to us reaching the goal, but we still do need more. Many more have been discussed, and so that's where the finance or the stewardship and development committee is following up with people who have discussed friendly loans. Now it's time to move from discussion to implementation, right into concrete pledges, and make sure part of that pledge is to include the expected delivery date of those funds, so that we've got an idea of the timetable of everything. So in an ideal world, we wouldn't need step number 2. In an ideal world, the combination of additional building fund donations and friendly loans is enough to cover the total project cost and all those contingency costs. But you have to be realistic. So if costs will likely, I'm putting it there as likely, we probably will need a bank loan. And then if it exceeds, there's a little process where it goes to a construction loan first and that gets rolled into a mortgage. Probably more detail than you needed, but I didn't want the words construction loan to come out of our mouths and people go, well, how's that different than a mortgage? It's all right in here for you, and you can look back on the definitions. Construction loan is temporary, usually a little higher interest. When all the construction is done, then the bank rolls that into the bank mortgage. So that's how that works. Now, in that scenario, we would know at the pace we're spending money and the projected cost, we will know if we need that construction loan. So working with the treasurer, we'll get that rolling well ahead of time, so make sure that we have no delays in the project. Okay, so if there is a bank mortgage, and we know we do have friendly loans, so there are different things that need to be paid out over time, over the next 20 to 30 or plus years, depending on the friendly loan terms. Your bank mortgage, just like your home mortgage, you pay in monthly installments, so that's principal and interest, and that's got to come out of the operating fund. If there's anything left in the building fund, it could come out of that, but if you're getting a mortgage, there's probably nothing left in your building fund. Okay. Friendly loan interest where applicable, depending on the terms of each friendly loan. So let me go into a little bit of detail there. If you're in a position to give a friendly loan, we would work with you to mutually agreeable terms on that. And I do go into a little more detail in the definitions page on that. So some friendly loans are charging simple interest, some can charge compound interest, or some just repayment only of a principal at the end where applicable. I do see your hand. If I'm going to finish, please first. So the question becomes then, if we push off the principal repayment of the friendly loans, how do we pay that off? And that's where bequests come in. Principal amounts of the friendly loans the plan is to pay them through bequests. Okay, so that requires a concerted effort of everybody in meeting, as many people as possible, to think about how you will include in your estate planning the meeting. Things like including us as a beneficiary on your life insurance, or a name specifically in your will. And then the other piece of that is letting us know so that we can put together our giant spreadsheet and keep track of it. It's beautiful to do it, but it's more beautiful if we know, so we can understand what our long-term picture is. Friendly loans are on extended terms, so this is not our immediate priority at the moment. So we got to get through this last phase of whatever we can get in terms of donations and friendly loans. Those are the next, that's really where the effort is being held with the subcommittee for stewardship and development. But it does require, the bequests do require long-term attention, and that will fall to the stewardship and development subcommittee. Let me pause there to take the question, if that's okay.
Sorry, you said principal and interest, and I know why you didn't put taxes in there, because we're tax exempt. What about insurance? Our insurance bill should expand with a greater number of square foot. And that's a cost we need not lose track of.
Okay, right, and that would go under the operating fund. Thank you for that. Okay, so if we turn the page and scroll up to page 3, David, of the document. Was there another question? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, my question would be, from the perspective of the stewardship development fundraising people, is it more helpful to have a commitment of a friendly loan, or is it just more helpful to have a donation right now that just is a straight ahead donation prior to the building starting?
The donation is preferable. Friendly loan is next. And I guess that answers the question.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Yes, and yes. Oh, it's Victor. Hi, Victor.
Well, I answer it maybe a little differently.
Okay.
I mean, if the two amounts are the same, then obviously the donation is nicer. But if you're thinking about, let's say, you make a donation of, let's say, 20,000, and an alternative is to lend 100,000 to the meeting as on a friendly loan, and with an interest rate of, well, let's say the interest rate, let's say it's a zero interest loan. So if that loan were outstanding for, let's say, 4 years, and you're giving up around 20,000 of interest at a 5% rate. So those two alternatives are equivalent in the sense that it's basically 20,000 out of your pocket. But in that case, I think the meeting would prefer the $100,000 friendly loan, because that helps with our financing, it helps reduce our cost to the bank.
Thank you for that, Victor. That's very important, it's the amounts. I assumed you meant the same amount in each scenario there, so.
I didn't have any particular amount in mind. However, I will try and wrap my head around it.
So here's where we are. Is there a question online? I'm so sorry.
I actually did have a question. I'm curious about the overlap between 1 million cash in hand, friendly loans in hand, and where these numbers are, and if we're double counting somewhere. Where is the in hand count as?
Right. So with friendly loans, you'll see that doesn't have the words in hand. Cash in hand is 1 million, and friendly loans, we've got those verbal commitments of roughly 1.2 million. Some we have in hand that are in there, they're just mixed in. That's maybe $250,000 or so are already in hand. And then we've got pledges of about that amount. Firm pledges, I should say, and the others are conversations we've had all the way up to 1.2 million. So this is why we're talking about, it's got to change from discussions to delivering. Discussion.
So the 1.2 million is pledges and ones that you've had conversation about, and the 1 million cash in hand includes friendly loans you've already received the cash for.
Rick, did you recall? I think that's wrong. I think the friendly loans in hand are part of the light green stack up.
Yeah, that's only, it's about 100, I think it's 100,000 is what, there are two friendly loans we have.
Two friendly loans in hand for
And the total
100,000.
is 100,000.
Thank
It's
you.
a relatively small part of it.
Got it. I just wasn't sure which bucket they were counted in right now.
That's where all these discussions that we've had. And discussions might also include donations instead of friendly loans. But that's, all of that light green is capacity based on those conversations we had with Shannon Isaacs. And pledges, there were some pledges in there as well. I'm sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, sure. I just want to make sure I followed that. Because at one point I heard that the friendly loans that we already have are in the dark green side, and then I heard the friendly loans we already have are in the light green side. Can you say which place?
Friendly loans are in the light green.
Any
I'm sorry
type,
for missing.
whether you have it already or
Yes,
not.
whether we have or not,
Thank
exactly. All right, that's right. Okay. Any more questions online? Okay, great. So what is meeting asking me to do? What are they asking us to do? What are we asking us all to do? So first, I just pause and thank everybody, because everybody contributes to the life of meeting. And the financial commitments are reflections of that strength and that commitment. We contribute in so many ways. Everybody does. And everybody, a lot of people have already contributed to the building fund or pledged for friendly loans and contributed to the operating fund and raised that commitment to the operating fund when Pat gets her appeal weekly. So I don't want to lose sight of what people are already giving and have already done. This is that last mile delivery, in FedEx terms, right? It's getting it over the finish line. So these are all indicators of an engaged faith community bursting with commitment and action as we live our testimonies. The breadth of the participation and engagement on so many levels by our members and attenders is a vivid demonstration of the strength of our community. Now for the plan to work, Finance Committee is asking all members, including regular attenders, it can be a non-regular attender, shoot, I don't care. And they're call Spence and and talk, maybe get families or whoever, or former members who still have a soft spot for at the Adelphi, and other meetings. There's a lot of different ways. Anyway, to consider your commitment to meeting, the importance of the building project to the life of meeting now and in the future, and something else in there. And to consider your capacity to support this project and meeting more broadly in the ways listed below. For Adelphi to deliver this project and continue with its current set of activities, we really need every member to participate. So that's fine. That's our call to action. But there's a lot of different ways here. And if we could do at least one ideally too, then I think we're gonna get it where we need to be. So think about what you're doing for the annual fund now. We were on a Zoom call and the treasurer basically said, if everybody on this call, there's about 20 of us on this, pretty big group. If everybody on this call just increased by $100 a month, we would have enough to cover the mortgage in a state of mortgage where it's a large mortgage. It was both wow and both.
Operating fund, building fund or operating?
I'm talking about the operating fund, just to cover the mortgage costs, because a mortgage, costs a lot. So that was an aha moment for I think a lot of us. But $100 a month, that's $1,200 a year, right? So some of us can, some of us can't, some of us are looking at building funds. I just put that in context too. When you think about the 200-ish members who regularly give, and if we can all increase capacity, maybe not at $100, but if 3 of you can give $33 more and 2 people can give $50 more, right? Think about it in those ways. It's always like this pyramid, right? Who can give at a high level and then multiples at slightly lower and then lots of multiples at the lower level. So that's one way to think about it. Okay, so surely there will be some friends who cannot increase donations by 30%. So that 30% level, that was when we did the work with Shannon Isaacs. If everybody gave 30% more, we'd be able to cover a mortgage of up to $400,000, I believe was the number we came up with. So if all friends could increase by 30%, we get there. Knowing that that's not the case. So if you can give more than 30% more to annual, the operating fund, then that would really help. Or give a sizable donation to the building fund. And again, a lot of people have given, a lot of friends have given, okay? And 5 digits and in some cases 6 digits deep. The friends are committed to this. And you don't know it because we don't talk about money in these terms, but I'm laying it out there for you. Friends are deeply committed to this project. I hope that's inspiring, not guilt-tripping. It's really to inspire you. Amounts of several $1,000s and up will go a great way toward ensuring we end up with a workable bank mortgage, or even better, no mortgage at all. Maybe you have stocks or bonds that you're not really counting on, that are just kind of sitting there. If you're 59 and a half or older, you can take a penalty-free distribution from your 401k. That is not to say tax-free, because they do tax that, but it's something to think about. Just trying to think about where are there ways that I have capital that might be able to help this project. Now, as Carole mentioned, some friends have understandably been waiting for meeting's final approval before donating. The second reading is targeted for September meeting for business. So that time is nigh upon us. If you've been waiting, that approval is perhaps in the cards. There, I say that. Now is the ideal things to think about putting things in motion, because freeing up large tranches of cash, usually there's a time commitment and a time scale to it. So if we know what's coming, then we can plan around it. So it would start with a conversation with a member of the Stewardship and Development Subcommittee. I'm flipping the page here, David. So page 4 on the Word doc, where it starts pledge a friendly loan. If you're in the admirable and lucky position to have an amount in the range of $50,000 and above, that could be considered for a friendly loan. So we don't want to discourage people from giving loans. So if it's in that range, in that neighborhood. The reason that is so high is because there's a lot of tracking, as you can imagine. If we're putting a 10, 15, 20-year term on these loans, on the friendly loans, we need to understand where we are at any given time. So there's a lot of tracking, and to make the record keeping worth the effort, that's why we're asking for those larger amounts for that. So the amount needs to justify the record keeping. So if you're 5.5 and older, maybe there's a penalty-free distribution from your 401k. I'm just planting seeds, things to think about. If you have a savings account that's just generating minimal interest, well, take a chunk and get 4% interest from meeting, and then maybe it's a win-win scenario. Okay, you're getting more interest now. Term again would probably be pretty long, so that's all negotiable. Ideally, in the end, we end up with a dozen, but no more than 2 dozen friendly loans, because we're looking for big chunks to really get this across the finish line. Okay, make a bequest. So maybe this is something that's actually easier than you think. Ensuring that Adelphi is named as a beneficiary in your will or in your life insurance, or both. And just as importantly, as I mentioned before, letting us know so that we can track and understand where we are in terms of meeting our friendly loan obligations. And this way we can track them all, which I just said. And that's part 4 is listed above. And then I always want to make sure that we're volunteering and participating. This doesn't suck all the life out of me just toward this one project. We've got a very vibrant Strawberry Festival. We may need to consider other fundraising activities. That was part of the conversation coming out of Strawberry Festival this year. volunteering your time, donating your stuff to White Elephant, all these other little things contribute to the life of meeting and to the community that we're building. So I guess I pause there for more questions. I'm excited because I know the capacity is there, but we have to change it from capacity to pledges and to commitments. So I will stand now quiet and listen to your questions. Carole?
This isn't a question, it's a comment that builders will not hold their prices past 60 days. Is that accurate?
Yes, technically that's true.
Yeah, so anybody thought, well, let's talk about this for another few months? Very bad idea. I think it's kind of now or never. And that money will not be available for other things other than buildings, so it will become a pot of money. Yes?
I'm
sorry.
Before you go, if you don't mind, I see Alden, he's actually the clerk of the subcommittee, so I'm gonna call on him first because he's probably gonna add what I forgot. Thanks, Alden. Go ahead.
Well, not to add, I think it's an excellent presentation. My question, maybe this is more for Victor. You made a point that a contribution out of your IRA to the meeting, if you're over 59 and a half, would be penalty-free but not tax-free. My understanding is you can make a qualified charitable distribution to meeting as a tax-deductible organization and not pay any tax on that withdrawal. For some of us in higher tax brackets, that could be a very substantial penalty. It's not a penalty, but it's a tax that you have to pay on distributions. So that was a clarification question. I'm not sure for friendly loans if that applies or not. Maybe Victor can clarify if you make a friendly loan out of your IRA and you're 59 and a half or older, does that have any tax consequences? My understanding for charitable donations is it doesn't if you use a qualified charitable distribution. So it could be tax and penalty free for a donation, but maybe not for a friendly loan.
Victor, did you have a thought on that?
Well, I would love to stay here until like 8 or 9 p.m. and go through all of the details with you. I think the better thing is to say, if you are interested in some kind of financial support, other than just making a straight contribution, some kind of a loan, bequest, just come and talk to me, and I would be happy to help you figure out, given your assets and financial situation, what is the most advantageous way from a tax point of view and from your own finances to do this. Lots of details. It's going to be different for everybody.
Thank you, appreciate that, Victor.
But Victor, just on the donation front, you can structure it as a tax-free contribution, right?
There are 30 different ways you can do it.
Okay.
I saw a hand here, but I asked for a break. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned that the building costs of $2+ million did only include construction costs. What does it not include?
There are other soft costs, permitting.
But it does include finishes.
Insurance, and then you always have contingency, right? They can find an oil tank or something, hidden condition there. So
but it includes the finishes of the building.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Furniture.
Furniture?
Not so
No,
much.
not furniture.
So we have to buy chairs for the new social hall.
Oh, we got those downstairs.
Start.
Yeah,
Right,
well,
we're in a good position to start.
what I heard from the builder and what Ruben heard from the bank is that once it's underway, people are much more likely to give donations, that there is something about it happening that makes people suddenly think, well, I can donate more. And I mentioned when Nick Mona was here, I was just chatting with him, and I confessed to him. I said, I've been holding back, and I wonder if other people have been too. He said, oh, yeah. He said, that's always the way it is. That was interesting. So who knows? We could maybe buy those chairs and tables.
Thanks, that's right.
Two things. One, the offer that Victor made to sit with you and figure out how to make the proper financial arrangement. I have already done that with Victor. It was a great process. It was all by phone. and it was clear, and we arrived at a pretty good solution. So I want to testify to that. The other thing is, as I was reading, you were going through this presentation, you said perhaps you hold stocks or bonds that you are not counting on for retirement. That triggered in me a memory of one painful little stock that's left over from something else that I don't ever really care about. So the general point I'm making is these kinds of suggestions can find fertile ground. You keep brainstorming suggestions to make for people where to look for money. That's a good thing.
Maybe, James, just to add a little bit on process, since you didn't mention this, I think friends recall that over 2022 and 2023, the Development and Stewardship Subcommittee talked to, I think, 75 members or families in meeting to do the initial capacity assessment. We have not returned to most of those people since then, but I think now that we have a firm bid in hand and we have a sense of what we need before we make a final decision at the September meeting for business, we are going to circle back with people and just try to get their quick assessment, maybe even online or on a quick phone call about where they see themselves in terms of it, donations, friendly loans, and most importantly, perhaps increasing contributions to the operating fund to meet the additional principal and mortgage repayments. And I think we want to try to do that in time to have that information updated by the time we come to the second reading of this in September. So expect to be hearing from someone on the committee over the next weeks, just to get that process starting. So we have the most up-to-date capacity assessment that we can give you by the time we have to make the final decision on this.
Thanks, Alden. And as a member of that subcommittee, I would also say, don't ghost, please don't ghost. You know, ghosting is when you don't respond at all. Please at least respond, not yet, I can't, or what have you. You know what, let's have this conversation in November, December, or what have you. With just an honest answer, it's better than no answer at all. Because we get it, everybody's at different life stages. Even if somebody we had a conversation with you 3 months ago, things could have changed and things do change, and we understand.
And as we start talking about these extra things, these things aren't the mortgage. One of the things that David Hunter at the BYM camps has done is he put out pleas for $5,000 buys a canoe, $15,000 will get us a vehicle, $10,000 gets a cabin. You can start putting dollar amounts on specific items and get people's interest in that way. If it's something that speaks to them, they're like, oh, I could buy 20 chairs. Great, sure.
Great point, David. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, in talking about friendly loans, Victor said you could do a friendly loan, and it's sort of like a gift. It's like here's this dollar and I'm giving it to you, and then 10 years from now you give it back to me, right? So then you said 4%. Is that for those people who might want to do a friendly loan and might want to sign up for an interest-bearing thing?
Mm-hmm.
Is 4% just the number you threw out?
It's a number I threw out there. It's not a commitment.
Can you clarify how that will come about, like somewhere along
something
the way?
below market, right, so that we're saving and you're running.
No, I was just going to say that this meeting has, I don't know what the exact number is, but we have a large percentage of our attenders and members who are 70 plus, up to 95, 93, I think Julie is at this point the oldest member. And many, if not most, have either IRAs or another equivalent from which they could give charitable deductions on an annual basis, which helps them even to at least equalize or perhaps go over their mandatory distributions.
Oh, okay.
And for me, for example, I, God willing and a creek don't rise, my hope is to live to be 75 when the school is going to be 50 years old, since I have been involved before it actually opened and every day since. So were I to make an annual, were I to raise my donation to the the ongoing budget,
Uh-huh.
that would be at $100, okay? That's only $1,200 a year. If I wanted to give $30,000 to the building fund,
Right.
in addition to what I have already given, and I decided to give $3,000 on an annual basis for 10 years
Okay.
from my IRA, okay, then instead of $12,000, you would be getting $30,000.
Right, okay, I'm following.
And I would say that it would make me less fearful if I were giving it on an annual basis, just as I do in terms of my monthly donations, than it would if I were asked to give as a friendly loan or as a donation of $30,000. And so I think people should look carefully at that as an option so that it would come and it would be like you would feel it less. And you would not lose the interest that you are getting on your IRA. And despite the fact that the way I've set it up, it doesn't give me gobs of interest because I want it to all be green. And so, anyway, so I'm just giving that as a real option for people who are in a similar situation to myself, as a single woman retiree over the age of 72.
And that makes sense to me, right? For some people, the big chunk makes sense. For other people, the ongoing makes sense.
Yeah, and $3,000 a year would make a difference as
On the
you
operating budget.
look at the building fund growing
Right.
to cover whatever costs there are, whether it's the mortgage or whether it is a repayment or interest on friendly loans.
Right. We go down, not a rabbit hole, but just to expand on what is in here on the building fund, which is under definitions, so I'm gonna say page 5 of the 6-page packet. David, could you bring up page 5? It starts with annual operating budget. It's the definitions page. Thank you. So with the building fund, when you set up a separate fund like this, you set up specific guidelines of what it can be used for, and those are delineated here. It's no surprises, I don't think, right, for construction of the facilities, the things you think about. And those are called the designated purpose. And so when the money comes into the building fund, whether the donor recognizes that or not, those are the designated purposes that that fund can be used for. So the reason I bring it up is because number 4, to retire the principal on any mortgage or borrowing to use to finance construction. So in the event we do end up with a bank mortgage, we would keep the building fund rolling. We might be entirely depleted because we want to do that, make that bank mortgage as small as possible. But by keeping it open, we can still accept donations, and those can be used to help retire the interest on retire the principal more quickly on that bank mortgage. So there had been a question about that. What would happen to the building fund once depleted? We keep it open.
I have a question. I want to go back to Carole's presentation. You kind of zipped right past the part where there were 2 bids, I thought, within range. And it sounds like the committee has decided on a construction company and told them if meeting approves, they are the selected one. And I suppose asking them to proceed drawing up a contract that can be signed if meeting decides affirmatively. Can you say something about those 2 bids and why building committee chose the construction firm they did?
Well, yes, the second company was 100,000 more higher than the first. And also, there was some experience with this particular company that we did choose, where they have come in lower than other companies. And they still do the project on time and in budget. Our architect called the owner of Mona a people pleaser, and I think he meant that in a good way, not, that he really wants you to be happy with the product. You can't hate that. He talked about a project where most construction companies bid in the range of 6 million. Mona came in at 5 million and got it done on time and on budget. So he's a very good communicator. He keeps in touch with us. There are just so many positive aspects to this particular company that met our needs for sure. And higher minority rate in terms of subcontractors.
So he's been told that he's the one that the committee likes and to proceed with making formal papers.
We made that decision. We saved you the anguish. Hardly,
Perfect.
Yes, there is time involved in this, and the building committee has all the details. And there were probably other details that I could not tell you because they were embedded in the, well, you've got this under this category and someone else has it under that category, it was just like, okay, just spare me this one. Yep, Margaret.
I just want to say thank you. I have been out of touch with this process for quite a while, and I was at the way closing spot, right? And this has also been really traumatic. I mean, for a lot of people in this community, including, the reason why my husband doesn't come to meeting anymore is because of this process. It's not Adelphi's fault that there was, but I'm just saying, a lot of people have been through a lot. And to get to this place and the absolute, the message that I gave this morning about, hitting a rock 100 times, well, I think you all have hit the rock 1.5 million blinking times, right? But it feels like something has opened, and it's so exciting to see this, and the perseverance and the heart and the creativity that has gone into this. I just want to tell you, I am so thrilled to see this and so excited, and I hope everybody recognizes what this is. Yeah, it's amazing.
This friend speaks my mind.
Yeah. There are some times when things are happening that are good, you just have to get out of the way. Rather than stand there and say, why is this good? And well, maybe it isn't really that good, and just forget it.
I want to add one thing. Speaking as the clerk of your Memorial Garden Committee, where I myself expect my ashes to be interred not too soon, but, I think about this a lot. There is a future group of people who are worshiping in this room, maybe none of whom are here right now, right? Adelphi Meeting is a living, breathing entity, and I'll be out there so that my kids can come by and say, hi, Mama. And the way to make that keep going is all of this stuff y'all have been doing and these decisions that we're making. And somehow, it's not just the building, it's the future building and the future people who will be doing good things with reparations and whatever else they're doing that we can't even see yet.
Yes.
So I'm glad you mentioned future. So as I looked at this room, I don't see too many people under the age of 60. If I envision correctly what the drawing shows, I can see pretty clearly how it will change very little how I will interact and benefit from the meeting as I currently do. I benefit from this meeting, have benefited for over 20 years. The people in the future that may benefit from it, I don't see many of them in this room. And whether this is a good expenditure at this time, I'm not going to say, but at some point, if we are actively making a decision to spend the money, in effect, we are saying we think it's the right project at the right time, and into the future, people will benefit from our wisdom. But if we decide it's not the right time, we have another question to ask. And I put this to Jim earlier. What will we do with the assets going forward? How can we benefit from those assets in different ways? That's all I have to say.
Well, I do want to clarify that the building fund, as I understand it, is only for building projects. So it can be used for that.
In the definitions, we've got building fund, those 5 definitions are pulled directly from the building fund minute when it was created. So that tells you exactly what they can be used for. And some of us who were around, it was about 12 months ago-ish, I'm looking at you, Victor, it was where we said we had to update that minute to say if funds are still latent in the building fund, and I think we put a real far date out there, like 2032, I'm gonna say, then meeting can decide the disposition of those funds. So it's not in perpetuity, but we could not do anything outside of those 5 purposes until after 2032. And I might have the date wrong, but I am almost positive that was the date. Victor, does that sound right to you? We put it at 2032?
Yes. I don't have the language in front of me.
Okay. Thank you for the questions. Oh, Sharon, you got a question? Sorry, go ahead.
It's not so much a question, it's a comment. And this is something I came up with when BYM was celebrating the 350th anniversary. And I was on the Quaker Witness Quaker History Subcommittee. And I was trying to describe to people in a very short bit what it was we were doing. And I finally settled on this. I said, the present is where the past and the future meet and interrogate each other. So if you want to know whether Quakers are going to be here 350 years from now, think of them turning back to us right now and saying, what did you do? So hold that thought for this meeting.
Yes, sir.
It's just occurring to me, Philip and Sharon, that we should keep in mind that the building we're sitting in came about as a decision of people who are no longer here. They've died, or they've moved, or they've changed their mind. It was their vision that provided this for us. And it's parallel to what we need to decide now, and how the people who we don't know yet will come and be part of this community and keep this thing that is this treasure that is Adelphi meeting going into the future.
On that good note, we're done.